Hello, you're back with Dave and Tim on the Single Malt Review as we continue delving into Campbellton whiskey.
We're back on the peninsula here. Thanks again to Ian for this one. It is none other than Springbank 12 with a bit of a wrinkle. This one is Cask strength.
Yes.
So, same whiskey, less water, which is fine by me.
Yeah, Springbank 12 is one that has passed us by in the range so far. I've looked at the 10 or looked at a couple of the older expressions, but never just straight to 12. So it's good to go in to the deep end with the Cask strength offering. And how strong is Cask strength in this instance?
This one, I mean, this is heavily batched because it depends on the casks they were filling on the day. This one is 56.3%.
Wow.
So that's sort of that tracks. That's about where you'd expect the percentage to go after 12 years in Campbellton.
Now, as a recap, what makes Springbank unique among Campbellton whiskey?
Oh, almost. You throw a stone in Campbellton and you will hit three different things that make Campbellton Springbank a unique whiskey. It is, as they like to say, a very odd whiskey, made in a very odd place by very odd people. I think they have actually modified the street sign to say exactly that. But Springbank is really quite a unique product. One, it's Campbellton whiskey, which is almost unheard of these days. Once the biggest distilling region in Scotland, now a distilling ghost town inhabited by about 3 different producers. Springbank being the by far the biggest and most well known. Springbank is also weird because it makes 3 different whiskey brands and they're made 3 different ways, which sounds like an absolute nightmare, but they seem to manage. Springbank is the sort of middle child, I suppose. They also make Hazelburn, which is their, well, they call it unpeated. We've tasted some distinctly peated Hazelburn, so there maybe is a bit of bleed across from one to the other. And the Long Row, which is their heavily peated. And these come out in all different forms, all times of year. One even, I think a Hazelburn got aged in a New Zealand Pinot Noir barrel. So truly anything is possible.
That was the Long Row Red from a year
it was Long Row Red, right.
It was phenomenal. So heavily peated, but with an excellent red wine finish.
When it comes to Springbank, all bets are off.
Yeah.
The what makes Springbank itself particularly weird is it is a 2.5 times distillation. Which is a bit like, you might say, how do you distill something half a time? It's a bit like, it's a bit like, I don't know, and good luck anyone for this one. It's a bit like Super Mario 64 in 1.5 A presses. It's a technicality.
Right.
Please don't comment, though if you know, you know. This is partially through the Hazelburn process, which, as I forgot to mention, obviously, at the end of the day, that's triple distilled in the Irish style. So part of that is blended back into the double distilled Springbank by Springbank, and there you get 2.5 in technicality times distilled whiskey, because that's all blended together. So it's a fairly odd animal, and that's sort of what you have to be in the gun for if you want to get down with Springbank. But in terms of how a whiskey is going to treat you, I think Springbank is a really approachable whiskey. All of the weirdness aside. All of the, it gets called, it's really funky, it's really strange, it's really weird. It's very, very drinkable. I think it's very, very easy to drink. So don't let any of that scare you away, because I think Springbank, it's one that everybody who enjoys whiskey should try. And, as a 12-year-old, So anyway, enough of this fuzz surrounding it. I could go on all day about Springbank. But what we have...
Fairly rich golden colour, sort of, imagine a fairly robust ale, perhaps.
Coppery, you call that. And Springbank, not fans of chill filtering or colouring the whiskey, particularly when it's cask strength. So what we see is what we've got. So there's a wee bit of sherry being used on that one. We can be fairly sure. And
more than a wee bit, judging by the nose.
Yeah.
Oh, that prickles.
Coppery, metallic strawberry. Strawberry is what you get in Springbank, and it amplifies as the age goes on. When you're dealing with
jammy whiskey.
Yeah, when you're dealing with the 18-year-old, or even, God forbid, you can afford it or somehow find it at a tasting, the 21, that strawberry sort of compote flavour, strawberry jam, it really starts to take control, and it's the most bizarre thing because no other distillery on the planet quite brings the magic of that strawberryness. It's really in its infancy here in terms of that note, but you can start to smell it. Peat. There is peat in here. They are, don't quote me on this, but I think they're between 10 and 20 ppm peating, so it is not insignificantly peated whiskey. Their long row is way higher. I think that's up in the 40. That's that's either peating levels once you're into the long row, but peat always plays a role in Springbank whiskey, even if they say it doesn't, and that's my official opinion. Unpeated Hazelburn, be damned.
The peat is adding a bit of an edge to it, like a hint of danger. There's even like, are you getting a faint whiff of what you describe as sticking plasters, like Band-Aids?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's always something I can parrot, but not really have any connection with, because old sticking plasters, and people say hospital corridor, like this sort of creosote smell of disinfected used in the old world, but not in our lifetimes, not down here in New Zealand. More modern compounds being used, so it's something that I don't have any real currency or memory of, but it's something that's described a lot, and so it always sort of baffles me. But yeah,
that's one of those things that if it comes up in beer, if you're brewing beer and you get a whiff of that sort of plasticky antiseptic sticking plaster smell, you got a bad batch.
Yeah, you have goofed at that point.
But in whiskey, obviously, it's a whole different beast, and that is here just an element of some slightly funky peat.
So full strength on the palate, and it's not a we've in this session we have glanced with 65% whiskies and lived to tell the tale. This one obviously a lot more approachable at a mere 56. It's still pretty fiery. On the
there is a strong kind of a rubbery, like a slightly burnt, vulcanized rubber property, which again the peat, possibly even the sherry casks.
Yeah. It doesn't give you more than a few seconds before that really takes hold.
Yeah, it's something like oh god, was it Edredor who do the wonderfully very very sulphurous sherry cask whiskies.
Sherried Edredor is one of the sort of the hallmarks of the real tire fire style.
And there's a bit of that going on in here.
Whiskey. And that of course comes from the sherry casks, and
so I got a whiff of modelling glue, bit of the old air fix.
Bit of acetone in there.
Oh, that's going to need a bit more time to breathe, I believe.
So with water that becomes a lot fruitier, and we've got like berry fruits on there. Strawberry is sort of where it begins, but there's
it's fierce. Yeah,
there's like a raspberry, and it's all very. It like wants to be sweet, but then that peat and that smoke just catches it and carries it way up here, and it becomes a much more lifted whiskey, whether it likes it or not. And the weird thing is that really drops off with age extremely fast. We may not have tried this one, but years ago we tried the 15, sorry. And that was one of the juiciest orange juice style whiskies we've ever tried. It's amazing what a few years will do to this particular whiskey.
There's a lot of marmalade, stewed fruits, and fruit jam happening here already. Adding water has taken away that burnt sulphurous property. It's really softened that. It's still present on the nose.
It can really drink it down too. Yeah. That almost needs a second.
I'm going to add a splash more water too, just to see how we can maybe go for a perfect whiskey.
And you can see that cloud really starting to bloom there. That is definitively unchill filtered. Yeah, I think that just gets better and better.
Yeah, the nose has gone slightly more dank and tinned fruit smelling. Still some of that burnt rubber. But on the tongue, it is sweeter and fruitier for it.
Yeah, and it seems a bit facetious, but we're now probably drinking this much closer to 40%. Yeah. Potentially the best way of drinking Springbank cask strength whiskey is drinking it at the same strength as Springbank 12, not cask strength whiskey. You just get quite a lot more in your bottle this way. So.
You get to go on that whiskey journey of
You do,
trying
you
all
do.
the different flavours as you add more and more water. It's like a way
Without
to sample several whiskies at once.
Without a typical 12 to compare it to, I can only assume that this is more or less a facsimile of the standard 12, which is bottled at 46. But because this one is cask strength, it's sort of bottled batch by batch, and so you would probably see more variance, sort of depending on which bottle you picked up, year to year, almost maybe even month to month. If you managed to end up with that many, you'd see a bit more variance because the casks, being brought out of the warehouse on that particular day, producing that particular batch, there'd be less vatting involved, I think, than the 12-year-old, or maybe not. Like I say, Springbank, anything goes, and all bets are off. They may just make everything in batches, and this simply doesn't receive the water treatment and goes down this chute into the cask strength vat. It's anything is possible. They're not out there to make absurd amounts of money. Springbank is an odd company. It's privately owned, and it's owned by an individual, I think. There's no shareholders,
J&A Mitchell and Company Limited.
Yeah. And you need to look this up, but I think it's a very interesting situation as to who's going to own it when this person finally passes on, because I think it's a family that has reached a terminus.
Okay.
So yeah,
I'm not aware of the dynamics involved in Springbank in
there's
particular.
all sorts going on.
Local staff, local
They
barley.
do.
It's
Yeah,
all very much in house, which is means that they have more control over keeping their own unique flavour.
they do. I think compared to other distilleries, employ something like 700% more staff because everything right up until slapping the labels on is done by hand, which is good.
Every part of a process from malting to bottling is carried out at the distillery.
Yeah. And that was a bit of an omission. Springbank whiskies are malted at the distillery, which puts them in maybe a group of 10 distilleries which do all of their own malting. Even new ones that made it quite a thing, like Killoman, only do a partial distillery malting these days. So for it to do the whole lot, that's quite unusual these days. Yeah. Scores wise, this is, we started with a Linkwood, which was maybe the diametric opposite of this whiskey, and it was difficult to score because it was so light-bodied and spirit-driven. You really had to change your mindset, the angle of attack, to score and taste the whiskey. This one is completely different. This whiskey is in your face at all times, and it's more a case of sort of muscling your way through all of that. And this is whiskey that we very easily mark very, very high just because it's so present. It's there, it's immediate, it's arresting, it grabs the spotlight, it hams it up, it really, really takes over. But it's the only one today that's... it's so close, it's so close. I'm not giving it the 90. I'm really close to giving it the 90, but it's getting an 89 from me. What do you think?
Marginally lower for me, it's 88. It's not a quintessential Springbank, it's not a quintessential Campbellton whiskey. That doesn't mark it down, of course, but what does mark it down is perhaps just the clash between that vulcanized rubber and peaty soot on the nose and the more mild, sweeter flavours on the tongue, which especially emerge with more water being added. As at the moment, it still smells of distinctly rubber cement, old tin fruit. That's kind of like, more savoury, more dank, less sweet notes. And on the tongue you have all that fruit, all that jam, those berries, that compote. It's it's not as harmonious as you might like. It doesn't do things by halves. It is big.
I don't think it's harmonious at all.
No.
I don't think Springbank... Well, I mean, Springbank can do harmonious. It often chooses not to. And the 12-year-old is a pretty distinct example of that. When you get up to the 18, when you get up to the 20s, then you might start to see harmony. But no, nothing to do with it. Sub 15, it is just a more is more... throw everything at the screen type of whiskey, and you are either on board for that or you are not. But I mean, if you've tasted Springbank, you are aware of either the solution or the problem, depending on how that particularly took you. But it is its own thing, and I think probably always will be, just because it exists in this weird interdimensional pocket where corporations and profit margins are not beholden to everything that it does, like so many other whiskies, as the great age of conglomeration eats everything up. Disney's going to own Diageo soon, if you know. Klein Leash will be the 46th Disney princess. I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, this has been the Single Malt Review, and this has been Springbank 12-year-old Cask Strength.
Yeah, thanks again to Ian for sourcing.
Yeah, thanks so much for Ian for these ones. Cracking drams coming down from that. I just hope they'll be posted with a bit more legality next time. But anyway, they got here in the end. So cheers, Ian, and cheers to all the viewers out there. This has been the end of a quite a long session here. There's just bottles all over the table, which you can't see, but it looks like a drunken wreck here.
We do not film often, but when we do, we like to be comprehensive.
Oh yes, film. No, it's gone. It's gone. It's finished. Session's over. Go home. Go to your loved ones. See you next time. This has been the Single Malt Review. Signing off.